of Aldigidol Cymru. Good morning and welcome to the Digital Health and Care Wales Audit and Assurance Extraordinary Committee. It is especially convened to review and endorse the final audited accounts to present to board before being signed off later today at the extraordinary board meeting. I'd like to welcome my committee members, in particular Ruth Glazard, Vice Chair of the Board, and David Selway, Independent Member, and of course all those in attendance this morning. We are committed to openness and transparency. This meeting is therefore being recorded and will be subsequently posted on DHCW's website, and today's committee papers are available on our website as usual. I will be assuming that you've all had a chance to read the papers in advance of today's meeting, but I'd just like to clarify one specific point. Today's papers were initially issued a week today, and this iteration, as you will have seen, I'm sure, included a number of caveats from Audit Wales, as their audit work at that point was not quite completed at the point of publishing. The papers were subsequently reissued on Friday, and the only difference being that the caveats had been removed as the audit work been concluded with no ongoing issues. So I therefore agreed to reissue those papers as a result, and I just wanted to explain the rationale for doing that at the outset. Right, apologies for absence. I have apologies from the committee vice chair, Grace Quantock, the chief executive, Helen Thomas, and Ivan Evans. They are both representing DHCW at a conference today. I have apologies from our head of corporate services, Julie Ash, and Gareth Lavington, head of counter fraud. Are there any declarations of interest? No? If so, then I'll turn to the section 2 of the agenda and the annual accounts for 21-22. You recall that the Audit and Assurance Committee received the draft accounts at our last meeting on May the 24th. And we there reviewed the accounts and we were updated on the progress by the audit undertaken by Audit Wales. Now that that audit has been completed, the accounts are here today for endorsement to board. And as I mentioned, a DHCW Special Health Authority Board meeting is being held this afternoon to approve the accounts for submission to Welsh Government by tomorrow's deadline, which of course is June the 15th. I will therefore turn to Claire Osmondson-Little, our Executive Director of Finance, to present the annual accounts. Claire.
Thank you, Marion, and I'm delighted to be able to present the first set of annual accounts for the period up to the 31st of March 2022 for DHCW. We prepared a draft, as you've already mentioned, Chair, to Welsh Government on the 29th of April, and we updated the Audit Committee with a briefing on the 3rd of May. We did a development board session on the 5th of May to take the board through the detail around the published accounts, and subsequently on the 24th of May we presented the draft set of accounts. What we have today is the final set of accounts that have been audited by Welsh Audit Office, and they will take you through the ISO 260 later on. We are seeking today the approval from the Audit Committee, which we will then take to the board this afternoon, so we can finally submit the accounts to Welsh Government on the 15th tomorrow. What these accounts show is that they are for a period of 15 months. DHCW was established on the 30th of December 2020, and this was following the establishment order that was 2020, number 1451, which under section 22 of the NHS Act 2006 enabled the organisation to operate. The accounts are summarised under 5 key headings and are supported by a series of detailed notes. Those 5 headings cover the net expenditure and then a more detailed comprehensive analysis of those net expenditure. There's the statement of the financial accounts and financial position, and then there's the changes to taxpayers' equity, and finally the cash flow information. We are of course required to undertake 2 financial duties in relation to our statutory accounts. The first relates to enabling us to balance our accounts within our net expenditure, and we can confirm that the accounts that we have done that as DHEW. The second relates to a detailed financial plan that underpins that delivery. We submitted this on the 27th of May 2021 and subsequently have complied with that requirements. That was later than usual due to the fact that we were up and running from the 1st of April. There are a number of amendments to the draft accounts, primarily related to presentation, and again we've detailed those, and Welsh Audit Office will take you through those in more detail. But what I wanted to touch upon also is that the accounts are really an outcome of a detailed number of financial processes and underpinned by the financial team that are really at the heart of what DHEW does. And their competency and professionalism has enabled us to fulfil our requirements. It's quite a historical year. This is the first year, and this year has enabled us to establish the board, to respond to COVID-19, and also to develop digital priorities on behalf of Welsh Government, but also the broader NHS in Wales. That financial outcomes is really a reflection of good financial governance, guided by the SFO, the Standing Financial Instructions, but for us, the Standing Financial Requirements, which has been underpinned by a plan and a budget, which this team at this audit committee has quite rightly challenged, scrutinised and supported during the year. So I'd like to thank within DHEW the Exec Director support and the Directorate support to the leaders and the nominated budget holders that have undertaken their responsibilities to enable us to give a true and fair view. From the support we've had from internal audit and also external audit, and also from the letter of representation from Counter Fraud, which really shows that we have undertaken our responsibilities. We've scrutinised, shared and challenged these through both the board and the audit committee. But I'd also like to thank my team, the finance team, who've approached this with openness, with transparency, but also with the mindset of learning. So we've learned a lot as a team during the last 12 months, and we've still got a lot to learn. But I think it's through their hard work and commitment that I'm delighted to show and share our final set of accounts, and to be mindful that we've got it with an unqualified opinion. So I'm happy to take any questions at this point. Thank you, Chair.
Diolch, Claire. Thank you. That's a very succinct introduction to what is a very pleasing set of accounts, as you've highlighted, meeting our 2 financial duties, and it's been a remarkable year, as you've rightly said. Can I check whether there are any questions, observations or comments from my colleagues? Ruth.
Diolch, Marion, and thank you, Claire. Just to echo your comments, Marion, actually, it's been an exceptional year, and you know, I think we've appreciated as a committee the work of the team, and the openness and the conversations that we've had. So I think, you know, at this point, it's good to be able to just say thank you, and you know, we can approve the accounts. Well done, and it's a massive effort to get here. So really pleased. Thank you.
Thank you for those sentiments, Ruth. And I can see across the virtual table that those sentiments are echoed by David as well. I'll turn now then to Mark Cox, our Deputy Director of Finance, who's also indicated that he wants to contribute. Mark.
All of that, Pawb, and thank you, Chair. Just to echo Claire's sentiments, really. We've looked upon this process as not being just one of assurance, but an opportunity really for learning and improvements. And I just want to extend my thanks and gratitude to Mike and his team, because they've, I think they've complemented our approach well in this process, and the partnership perspective that we've both looked to continue and complete this exercise has led to this outcome.
Thank you, Mark. We are being asked to endorse and approve the annual accounts, and clearly we are joined today by both internal and external audit, and we'll be hearing from those in due course. The accounts, of course, include the financial statements, the letter of representation, and Audit Wales's ISA 260 report, which we'll be hearing more of now in due course. So unless there are any other observations at this point, I'm going to move on then to the Audit Wales ISA 260 report. It's simply here for your information and to support our consideration of the annual accounts. So I'm going to invite Mike Whitley from Audit Wales to present the report, which we're being asked to note. Mike.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you, Chair. Happy to take you through the ISA 260 report this morning. I think Claire covered quite a bit off in her covering report. From our perspective, it's been a really positive audit. I think that's worth getting on record. The engagement we've had from Claire and Mark and Sean and the wider team has been really positive. I think Mark makes a key point there in terms of it being a joint learning. Certainly, we've learned a lot around the organisation as part of our audit. And hopefully Mark and the team have learned a bit more about kind of how we operate, the kind of things that we look at, and so on. I think it's important just to note at paragraph 8, we attend to issue an unqualified opinion. That is a significant achievement in first year and reflects well on the team. The draft accounts we received for audit were of a really good quality, supported by comprehensive working papers, which is a significant achievement, and really pleasing for us to see that we've had all that on basically day one of the audit. It was good to go, so that was really positive. I think the regular meetings we've had with Mark and the team throughout the audit have been really useful in terms of just managing the audit process, and kind of engagement from officers even outside of the finance team has been really positive, and people have been really quick to respond. So that's made my life a little easier throughout the audit. So thank you for that. On paragraph 12, we highlight there are no uncorrected misstatements in the accounts. Anything that we've identified throughout the audit, we've discussed and agreed, and the accounts have been amended for. Paragraph 13, we highlight there were some misstatements which Claire's covered off in her covering report, the detail of which is in Appendix 3. I wasn't proposing to go through all of the amendments in detail, but happy to pick up any if members have any questions on any of the specifics there. Important to note in paragraph 14, there's no significant issues arising from the audit we feel we need to bring to committee's attention, which again is really positive. In Appendix 4, which we'll come back to in a second, it's just the one recommendation arising from the audit, which again is pleasing to see that Mark is already running with that. We've had the discussion. Mark's got a working group set up looking at the issues we've identified, which again is really positive. Appendix 1 is the letter of representation, which I appreciate was earlier on the agenda. The proposed audit report from the Auditor General is in Appendix 2, which highlights the areas that are covered by our audit. And again, just to reiterate, it's a proposed unqualified opinion following adoption of the accounts by the board this afternoon. Appendix 3, as I mentioned, is the summary of the corrections made. I think, again, Claire stole my thunder a little bit there, just in terms of summarising. An element of those are identified from Welsh Government from their review of the accounts. in terms of the transfer of the balances and just getting all that aligned for whole of government accounts consolidation purposes. So those amendments have been made. We've got some amendments just in terms of classification of assets transferred from Velindre, just in terms of splitting those between tangible and intangible, but the balances were complete when they were brought across and transferred into the ledger. So again, this is just a classification issue. For the recommendations in Appendix 4, we identified that there were a number of assets that were fully depreciated but still in use. So we've, through discussion with Mark, recommended that the asset lives are reviewed just to make sure that they are in line with the expected lives of the assets and how those assets are being used operationally. And as I mentioned, Mark's already running with that in terms of the capital and non-pay group have had an initial discussion about it and a meeting again on the 21st of July to further that recommendation. So a positive report from our perspective, Chair. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Mike, for that introduction. And just to echo your words, I think it's a very significant achievement that we've managed to achieve the unqualified opinion. And I'd just like to echo your thanks. The openness and transparency which you've all approached this process has been remarkable. And I'd like to thank you all for the part that you've played in this process. Are there any comments or observations? Any points that you'd wish to add to Mike's introduction? We've had a chance to scrutinise these reports previously in our last meeting in May, so you've clearly had the opportunity to raise any points previously. There don't appear to be any hands up at the moment, so I propose then we move on. And I'll take you to the annual report then for 2021. We are, as a Special Health Authority, required to submit our annual report, including our accountability report to Welsh Government at the beginning of the new financial year. And as with the annual accounts, the Audit Committee is required to endorse the annual accountability report, the performance report of the annual report. And I'm now going to invite our Board Secretary, Chris Darling, to present the annual report. Chris.
Diolch, Marion. So as you say, the Special Health Authority is required to submit an annual report to Welsh Government for this year by the 15th of June 2022, which will reflect the performance and the accountability arrangements we've had in place during 2021-22. This is the first year as a Special Health Authority we've submitted an annual report, and similar to Claire, really, it's been a learning experience as we've gone along. We have adhered to the Manual for Accounts guidance, in particular the Chapter 3 guidance, which sets out that all NHS bodies are required to publish a single unified document as part of a 3-part annual report and accounts, which should include the performance report, the accountability report and the financial statements. So the annual report is set out within the papers as item 2.3i. I'm just going to talk through the various elements of the report and what should be included from a guidance perspective. So the performance report provides information on the entity, its main objectives and the strategies and principal risks faced by the organisation. The performance report must provide a fair, balanced and understandable analysis of DHCW's performance during 21-22. The development of the performance report was very much a collaborative effort with staff from across DHCW involved, and I'd like to put on record my thanks to the considerable time that went into developing the information which has been included within the performance report as part of the annual report. The performance report will be a key feature of the annual general meeting that's scheduled for the 28th of July, celebrating the successes and learning and risks that we faced during the past just over 12 months. In terms of the accountability report, this is designed to meet the key requirements for reporting to Welsh Government, and it comprises of the following elements. So you'll note it includes the corporate governance report, the remuneration and staff report, and a National Assembly for Wales Accountability and Audit report. The purpose of the corporate governance report is to explain the composition of the organisation and the governance structures and how they support the achievement of our strategic missions. As a minimum, the corporate governance report must include the director's report, the statement of accounting officers' responsibilities, and a governance statement. And the governance statement is intended to bring together in one place in the annual report all the disclosures to governance, risk, and internal control. In terms of the remuneration and staff report, this relates to DHCW senior managers. And just to note, in terms of guidance, senior managers include those persons in senior positions having authority or responsibility for directing or controlling the majority of activities of DHCW. As Claire's worked through, the financial statements are comprised of the audited accounts, and these are included within the annual report. The report itself has been shared with board members during the iterations of the report, and a draft of the report was submitted to Welsh Government on the 6th of May. This was also submitted to Audit Wales and Internal Audit for comments and feedback. We've had feedback from board members, from Welsh Government and from Audit Wales and Internal Audit since submitting the draft on the 6th of May. We've incorporated iterations and changes as a result of the feedback received from colleagues, and I am really grateful for the feedback to make sure we've included everything we feel we need to within the annual report. In reviewing the annual report and financial statements, the Audit and Assurance Committee obviously will consider the work carried out throughout the course of the year in terms of the audit work and counter fraud work throughout the duration of the last 15 months. Particular reference should be made to the opinion provided by the head of internal audit, and I know Simon and Stephen will come on to talk about that as part of their head of internal audit opinion and annual report for 21-22. Chair, as you mentioned, the Audit and Assurance Committee play a key role in terms of endorsing the annual report and the accounts for board for their approval, hopefully later on today. So I'm presenting the annual report here for endorsement with the note that if endorsed, it will, of course, be presented to the annual general meeting on the 28th of July for wider citizens. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Chris. It's particularly pleasing, I think, to note that the board can take reasonable assurance that our governance arrangements, risk management and internal control within those areas under review are suitably designed and effectively applied. As you mentioned, Chris, this is our first annual report, charting very effectively and clearly, I think, the progress that we've made during our first 12 months as a special health authority. And it highlights very effectively the crucial part that DHCW plays in helping to deliver safe and sustainable healthcare for the people of Wales. I mean, in so many ways, it's been a truly remarkable year with those unprecedented challenges of the pandemic. And I'd like to take this opportunity to thank our executive team, our staff, and our budget holders, as well as internal and external audit, who've played a major part in the delivery of the papers before us today. You've all worked exceptionally hard to establish this new organisation and to deliver our strategic priorities and plan during this pandemic year. As highlighted by both the Chair and the Chief Executive in their introduction to the annual report, I think we can be very proud of the progress we've made during this first year of operation. So thank you all for that you've played in this process. Are there any other questions or observations colleagues would wish to make at this point? Now's your opportunity. David.
Thanks, Marion. It's not a question. I just wanted to add my comments to those to say this is a very well put together report, and I'd just like to thank Chris, the team, and the wider organisation for the clarity of the report and for the interaction we've had leading up to today.
Thank you, David. And I can see nods of approval and support from across the virtual table as well. So thank you for your introduction, Chris, to the annual report, which has been very pleasing to read. And I'm sure members of the public will appreciate that when they get the opportunity following the annual general meeting next month. So unless there are any other contributions, I propose then that we formally endorse the final version of the annual report for 21-22, and we recommend its approval by the board prior to submission to Welsh Government as part of the required annual reporting process. Diolch yn fawr, gyfeillion. So we'll move on then to agenda item 2.4, which is the head of internal audit opinion and the annual report. And this report sets out the head of internal audit opinion, together with the summarised results of the internal audit work performed during the year, which we've had ample opportunity, of course, to scrutinise during the course of the past 12 months. And it also includes an assessment of conformance with the public sector internal audit standards. It's my pleasure now to invite Simon Cookson, Head of Internal Audit, to present his report. Diolch. Simon.
Diolch, Marion. Thank you very much indeed. You've largely covered what I was going to say, so thank you very much in terms of that introduction. But formally, for the record, I'll very quickly run through the report and the key findings just to complement the rest of the papers on the agenda this morning. As you say, Chair, this is the head of internal audit opinion, and we have given a reasonable assurance around the governance, risk management and control arrangements of those areas we've looked at, and we've also taken into account other things that we've learned and seen and observed during the course of the year. And while it's reasonable assurance, I think it's perfectly fair to say it's a very good reasonable assurance in terms of the reviews that we've undertaken. They've either been substantial or reasonable, and many of those reasonable showed very strong arrangements being put in place and developing and embedding. And clearly, we, along with the committee, will look to see that a lot of these arrangements now embed across the organisation as it matures over the coming years. So page 5 of the report summarises those 11 reviews. Section 2 of our report takes you through all of our responsibilities, the basis of forming the opinion. Marion, as you said, how we conform with the public sector internal audit standards, and summarises the reviews that we have undertaken in the year that we have brought through to the audit committee for discussion. Clearly, a number of your key financial systems are operated by shared services, so we look at accounts payable and payroll each year, and that's summarised in section 3 of the report. And then section 4 and 5 picks up key performance indicators and also summarises the objectives of the audits that we have undertaken during the course of the year. So it's a report that is designed to comply with the public sector internal audit standards itself, as it is a requirement of them, but also to hopefully summarise in a fairly brief way the work that we've undertaken. But I think, and I would reiterate from our perspective, it's a very positive report and a very pleasing report to be able to issue. There have been a lot of thanks this morning, but it would be remiss of me not to add mine to the committee, to executive officers, to Chris and Claire in particular, but to all officers across DHCW who have supported us in doing this work. It needs that two-way cooperation to make the whole process efficient and effective, and I think we've had that during the course of the year. So a very big and genuine thanks from me for that. Stephen and I have very much enjoyed our first year of working with DHCW and look forward to that relationship continuing. Thank you, Chair.
Dear Simon, and thank you for your very positive comments. And it is indeed good to hear that it is a very good, reasonable assurance ranking. So thank you for those comments. I just wonder whether Claire wants to add anything to Simon's comments at this point.
No, I think he's been very comprehensive in his report. I do think the approach we've taken across both internal and external audit has been one of open-mindedness and actually learning. So I think collectively that's been to our benefit and will be a good basis on which to move forward. So yeah, and I'd just like to thank Simon and his team. And I know he's had quite a number of changes, but it's worked well with us over the year, and we've worked as a collective to get the audit actions done and robust responses. So thank you, Simon.
Dear Claire, so unless there are any other observations, I propose that we note and endorse the status of the Head of Internal Audit Opinion and the annual report for 21-22.
Thank you, Chair.
And that, I think, brings us to the end of the formal business. I've not been notified of any other matters for consideration at this committee meeting. So I'll just remind you that the date of our next formal scheduled committee meeting is July the 4th, but no doubt I will be seeing most of you around the board table at the extraordinary board meeting this afternoon. So thank you again for your contributions and your engagement, and it's a pleasure to be chairing this meeting and to be presenting to the board our first annual report and accounts on such a positive note. Felly diolch i chi gyd. Thank you all, and I'll see you this afternoon.